Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's take a look at this warm-up. If you're watching the video, go ahead and pause the video and try this problem, and then we'll go over it here in a second. So this is a compound interest formula. Now notice it's compounded continuously, and that's the part I want you to really make a connection with. When you see compounded continuous, that means that your growth factor is that special number E. And we talked about what E was and how it relates to finance, and this is basically what we're looking at. So what we have to do is we just have to read the problem and figure out, well, what are the parts of the formula? We're looking for how much money, find the value of your investment at the end of 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. And if we're compounded continuously, that means you're always getting interest on that piece at every second, at every moment of the day. So all we're going to do then is we're going to use that base E, and we're going to find out the value at 10 years. So when t is 10, when t is 20, and when t is 30. But we have to kind of think of the initial amount we put in. That's the P, that's your initial principal, was $100. And the R is the 8%. But remember, we have to turn that into a decimal. So I'm going to rewrite my equation to figure out the total amount. I'm going to take the $100, e to the power of 0.08 t, and then we'll plug in 10, we'll plug in 20, we'll plug in 30. And since I'm doing this for more than one value of t, I'll show you how I would solve this problem. And I think hopefully this is something that you guys kind of get used to. If you're allowed to use your calculator, we can go to y equals really quickly. So I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm just going to type this equation in. Remember, the base E is second ln, and then I'm just going to use the interest rate of 8% or 0.08, and then instead of t, I'm going to put x. All right, so now that I have my equation in there, I can use a table. And I'll show you something that you may not be super familiar with. It's the table set. So if I hit second and then table set, that's my window. Look at what it's asking me to do. It says, okay, well, where do you want your table to start? Do you want to start at 0? And I'll say yes, just because it'll be interesting to see. Well, we should know what we get with 0. We should be at $100 because we haven't earned any interest yet. But the next one is the delta table. That's your change. And what that means is, what do you want your table to go up by? Well, if I'm going to go up by 10 years, 10, 20, 30, I can change that to 10. And now, if I go to table, so by the way, if you missed that, I just went second table set, and I changed the start to 0, and then the change in the table is 10. So then I'll just go to table, second table, and now notice here are my three answers. I've got at 0 years, I have $100, which is what we started with. And then at 10 years, we have $222.55 if we round to the nearest penny. And then we've got $495.30 after 20 years, and $1,102.32 if we round that correctly. So I'm going to just do a quick screenshot. And that is one way that you can use your calculator very quickly to just get an answer for these problems. So one way that we could do this, I would just want to also get used to notation. Instead of calling this A, we could call it A of t. And that just means, what is t? Well, t is 10. And when 10 goes in, we have our output. And then what is A of 20 years? That's just saying 20 goes in for t, and we get our answer here, which I believe that rounded to 30. I should really double check that on my calculator. And then we've got A of 30 was $1,102, and I believe it was 32 cents if we look at that 7 rounded up to a 2. So that's just a really quick way, quick refresher. And there's a reason why I just threw that out there. We've done this before multiple times. But that's our goal today is we're going to kind of explore some things that have real life applications to it that we don't always get to spend time exploring in a regular math class. Okay, really quick, just so you guys are aware, the chapter 3 test, I graded it, I think it was this weekend. I'm trying to remember. It's been kind of a long weekend, but it's in the grade book. You can see your results. If you did not do well, let's say you didn't score above a 70%, then you could complete the chapter 3 study guide, and that was doing one problem from each category that's in Delta Math. And if you do that, email me, and then I'll go ahead and check your study guide, and I'll change your grade to 70%. All right. Now, some of you already did this ahead of time, and the that's what we asked you to do for as a review day. So if you already did this and you didn't score above 70%, all you have to do is email me and say, Strub, I already did it, and your grade will be boosted up to a 70% just like that. And that's the benefit to doing it. So I just want to double check. I'm gonna shoot. I don't know if I can. Actually, I can do it this way. Okay. So here's what we got. If you go to your Delta Math, I'm not going to click on it because that'll show everybody's names and the work they did. But there's an assignment called Optional Pre-Calc Chapter 3 Review. And that is also the remediation. So if you click on it, there's a lot. You need to do one successfully from each one of these categories. So it's probably 20 some problems. And if you do that, then email me that it's done and I'll change your grade to a 70% if it was lower. All right. If it's not, then you don't have to do it. If your grade is higher than 70%, then you didn't have to do it. And that was basically how we're going to approach doing the remediation. And I just want you don't have to write anything down here. I want you to think about this scenario and then let me know what you think based off of the poll. And I just have to get it up here, so give me 1 second. Um, there we go. Okay, so answer based off of the poll. If I give you $1 million today, which one would you take? If I give you 1 penny today, but then each day after that I double it, which other one would you take? Okay, so we got about 4 more people to respond. And we're waiting on 2 more people. Waiting on 1 more person. Okay, so I'm going to end the results. Interesting. We had 17% of people say they'd pick option 1 right away, and 83% said they would pick option 2. But I would say, what do you need to know before you make this deal? Right? There's probably some questions you have. The question for option 2 might be, well, how long? Right? If I say it's for a week, clearly there's a difference in the way you would answer this question, and that's the idea, and that's what we want to get you to think of. So let's look at the math here. And you don't have to write any of this down, but let's think of what do we have going on. Well, wait a minute. Isn't this a form of growth, right? Every single year, or excuse me, every single day, you double. the same amount. So you actually have what's called the doubling function, which means your growth factor is a growth factor of 2. You have your initial amount, which we could call that the P, the principal. Now, this isn't an exponential, excuse me, this isn't a um, compound interest one, so it's not a base E, but it's doubling every time. Every day it doubles. So what if I look at the math here? All right, now what I did was I just put in 2, my initial amount was 1 penny, and then T is the number of days this time. So let's think about that. After 0 days, I have 1 cent. After 1 day, I have 2 cents. Then it's 4, 8, 16, and it keeps on growing, right? So, and all I did was type this into my y equals. So after 10 days, you're at $10.24. And if you took option 1, you're probably already bought a house and a car and you're living a pretty good life, right? Meanwhile, option number 2, they can barely afford a full meal at Subway. So when does it start becoming beneficial? Well, let's think of that. What happens after 20 days? All right, now 20 days, you're at 10,000. And actually, I should take that. Yeah, you're at $10,486. And then you're doubling and you're doubling and you're doubling. Well, now look at this. At what point does it become better to take option 2 than option 1? And that's what we want to look at here is after 24 days, you're already at, let's see, I got to use a comma here. After 24 days, you're already at $168,000. So then all of a sudden, if we keep growing, 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 when do we get above a million? Well, a million has 6 zeros, so notice your exponential growth here. This 1.34 e to the 6 means I'd move my decimal spot three decimals over, or excuse me, 6 decimals over. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I would be at $1.3 million after 27 days. So this option, option 2, if you have patience, you're going to be in a much better spot than just the first option 1. So something to think about there. If this situation ever crosses your path, hopefully you will think about the math before you make your decision. All right, another option here. I'm going to release another poll. And let me get this one up here. So the poll here is, what about a more realistic scenario where I don't have to give you any of my money because you don't want to wait for teacher money. That would take a while. But the Zoom poll is, who will have more money at the age of 65? So here's 3 scenarios. Chris invests $5,000 annually between the ages of 25 and 65. Susan invests $5,000 annually between the ages of 25 and 35. Bill invests $5,000 annually between the ages of 35 and 65. So, of those 3 scenarios, Chris, Susan, or Bill, who do you think will have the most amount of money at the age of 65? And notice it says invests. So, all right, we're waiting on a couple more people to respond. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll here and let's see interesting results. Now, there might be some more questions asked too, right? And that's one of the things like this is a pretty vague question because I don't give you a lot of detail. And you have to make some assumptions. But if you notice, 70% of the people in class said Chris would have the most amount of money, and then it was Susan and then Bill. So let's take a look at what this would look like. In total, then, Chris would have been invested $200,000 between the ages of 25 and 65. So he puts $200,000 into his retirement. And that means he'll have he'll have basically $1 million in change at the end of 65. So he'll be able to retire with $1 million in the bank. Susan, who invests for not as much, gets $5,000 annually. So she only invested $50,000. She will have $500,000 in the bank, just a little bit more. All right. But Bill, who invests longer, he invests for 30 years versus Susan, who invested for 10, and then Chris, who invested for 40. So Bill would only have $150,000 in the bank. And here's a graph to just kind of look at it. And why does this fit into where we're talking about? Look at the growth. It's exponentially growing, right? And hopefully the big thing that you take away from this, you guys being young, and it's usually my experience is that a handful of you are truly going to listen to this and take it to heart. And it starts with saving a couple of $100. I know $5,000 a year in savings right now for a high school kid is not easy to do. And I fully understand that. It's not, to be honest, it wasn't easy to do as a teacher when I first started working. It takes a while to get there, but if you can do it, look at the benefit at the age of 25. If you can find ways to save enough money, he invests $5,000 a year, which in the long run isn't that much, but look at the difference in retirement. That is a significant different lifestyle that a person could live based off of that retirement piece. So that's part of the goal we want you guys to take away from today. So here's what we got for the rest of the day. I kind of titled this Things I Wish They Taught Me in High School. The mathematics of finance is the science of letting your money work for you, which is truly valuable information. So what I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to go to Delta Math, and there's a new assignment in Delta Math, and it's all it is 4 videos. Now look at the videos are very short, so it's completely doable. If you really crank it out, you can do this in probably less than 17 minutes. So your goal is to watch the videos, and then when you're done, you have to, and by the way, I get to see how much of each video you watched. So when you are done, then you're going to leave a comment in the discussion assignment on Schoology. So that's on our current page. And if you were to go to our Schoology page, you would see there's a discussion post. Once you're done with the videos and you post it in Schoology, what did you learn? What's one thing you took away from these videos? Then you're done. You don't have to do a screenshot of this because I'm going to read your video or I'm going to check your Delta Math piece and then as I read your discussion post, and that's where you'll get the points for today. There's no official homework tonight, and this is all due before the end of the hour. So you have the remaining of time to go through and watch the videos. You do not have to remain on Zoom if you don't want to. There are a couple people that had some questions, so I'm going to ask you guys to hang out. But